Once again, Nando v Movies is hosting a YouTube-wide video essay event. This time, everyone is covering their favorite villainous moments. The timing for this is great, considering how the scene I'll be covering today aired just earlier this year. This will include Rwby Volume 8 spoilers, and general spoilers throughout the show. This scene's importance to both Volume 8 and Cinder's character is critical. To frame the scene, the main villain in charge, Salem, was just betrayed by two of our other villains and had her means of transportation / super weapon obliterated. Not to mention, she was blown to shreds as well, but her immortality makes this a minor inconvenience more than anything. She'll be fully regenerated in about a few hours at most. On a rooftop, far away from the blast zone, Salem's last two remaining villains in Atlas discuss how to move forward as they are unable to contact any of their co-conspirators. Arthur Watts is your typical hackerman smart guy type villain, while Cinder is power-hungry and reckless. This puts the two of them in an awkward situation of needing to move forward with two different goals. Arthur Watts is content with following Salem's vision out as they wait for her to return, while Cinder isn't. For Salem, getting the 4 relics is priority number 1, while Cinder's priority is to collect all the maiden powers. Typically, these are divided among 4 different people, but Cinder is trying to take them all for herself. This often leads to Cinder clashing with the rest of our villains, and this is the scene where Arthur has had enough.
What?
I implanted a virus in her, you dimwit. She's on a set path now. At least she should be. As much as I hate to admit it, there seems to be some part of her capable of resisting. Regardless, it's only a matter of time before her mechanical body succumbs to the virus. She'll open the vault, then she'll destroy herself, and our little penny problem will be over.
What do you mean she'll destroy herself? How am I supposed to take her power if she's dead?
You know, it's impressive that you haven't realized this yet, but I don't work for you. Please, you can't just threaten me like everyone else.
This exchange puts Watts dangling over the ledge of the building very quickly. Considering how Watts' motivation has always been very Atlas-focused, I was expecting him to die sometime during this arc. But the intensity this scene fosters is centered entirely around if Cinder would dare waste a resource such as himself before their job is done. I wouldn't put it past her. Volume 7's finale showed us that Cinder has truly regressed in her planning skills when it comes to collecting the maiden powers, and she exhibits that yet again.
You think you're so clever, don't you, Arthur?
Salem sent you to bring me back.
Salem isn't here right now. But I think we can still come up with a plan while she's pulling herself together. First, I'm gonna watch you plummet to an unremarkable end. And then I'm going to burn a path directly to the vault, where I will wait to tear that magical puppet to pieces and take what is mine.
Cinder thinks that she can intimidate Watts, and that she can talk herself up, that what she says can will itself into place. But Watts has seen her fail time and time again, and isn't scared. This is a bit of a side note, but I really love scenes where two villains oppose each other, verbally or physically. These can be some of the best, most creative, or memorable scenes from the story arcs they appear in. It's part of why I really love this villainous scene. This scene shows us how even though Watts may not be as powerful as Cinder, he can easily outclass her in a verbal disagreement. This confrontation challenges Cinder to do better in her role as a villain.
Oh, of course you are! Because that's just what you do, isn't it? And how has that worked out for you? You stormed into Freya's room thinking you could take on Ironwood's top fighter and war machine. But you couldn't. And that machine became the Winter Maiden. Oh, and let's not forget your deal with Raven Brownwind. Get all your enemies in one place so you'd have a shot at revenge. If only someone could have warned you against such a miserable idea. Oh, wait. I did! But you pushed ahead and you lost it when all you had to do was your job! You think you're entitled to everything just because you suffered, but suffering isn't enough! Can't just be strong, you have to be smart! Can't just be deserving, you have to be worthy! But all you have ever been is a bloody migraine!
At this point, what were you thinking Cinder was going to do? Drop him? Strike a new deal? Let's take a break from this to discuss her role in the overall story of Rwby. Watts does a great job as the audience surrogate in this scene. Cinder was positioned as Rwby's main villain in the first 3 volumes, only to get curb stomped by Rwby's silver eyes in the Volume 3 finale. It's important to note here that Cinder only gained the Fall Maiden powers and not Beacon's relic. When Volume 4 starts, the way we view Cinder as a villain gets completely flipped. All of a sudden, she's seated at a table of villains that think she failed in her main mission and got wrecked by a no-name huntsman. And things only got worse for her from here. As Arthur points out, Cinder failed her mission to retrieve both the Haven Relic and the Spring Maiden powers in Volume 5, not to mention her recent failure of securing the Winter Maiden powers in both Volume 7's climax and earlier this volume. The last time Cinder really had a net positive win for the bad guys was in Volume 3. Even when she gave Salem the lamp at the beginning of Volume 8, she was just taking credit for Neo's score. This scene is the equivalent of you being able to shit-talk your least favorite coworker to their face for a year or so straight of their screw-ups, all accented by the point that Watts is one death grip away from dropping straight to his death. I truly love the decision to have Watts deliver this speech while he is held from his collar over the side of a building. If this man was going to die, he was going to die knowing he outlined all of Cinder's failures right to her face. I could end the video right here and say this was such a great villainous scene for Watts, but that's not the point of this video. This may have been Watts' scene to shine, but this is Cinder's volume. This volume began with her, and gave us more of her backstory than we've ever seen before. This scene is the turning point for Cinder's character. I just want to put a quick shout out here to the animation team and the absolute beauty of this shot of Cinder's realization. Her eyes dilating, the deep breathing, the head shake. For the first time, Cinder has considered that she has not done enough as a villain. What makes this an amazing villainous scene isn't the expression of a villain's ideology or that it's some cool villain reveal. Instead, it's a moment that sparks character growth for the villain the audience is most acquainted with. Usually, character growth in a villain stems from them changing their ways and joining the good side. But Cinder is not about that. She simply takes a moment to shed a tear and finally reflect on what her plan is, instead of jumping headfirst at any maiden power she can steal. Salem may be the villain in charge, but Cinder has always been the muscle in her group, so to speak. Cinder is often the one who has to get into the really important fights for maiden powers or relics. So this scene is demanding Cinder to be worthy of her role, of being Rwby's most important antagonist. This scene is the kick in the rear Cinder needed to steal the spotlight in the final few episodes of this volume. This is the backbone of Cinder's entire arc. This scene is featured in episode 10, Ultimatum, and the episode ends with Cinder getting kicked while she's down. Neo reveals she stole the lamp from the wreckage of the whale. Right after being told off by Watts, this is her first test. Did she learn anything about being smart, worthy of people listening to her? The next two episodes center heavily around Team Rwby dealing with Ironwood and his forces. This is honestly really cool in hindsight, but both episodes following Ultimatum feature Cinder as the last shot stinger. It couldn't have been more foreshadowed that any good plan Team Rwby had was going to be ruined by her. And poetically enough, the penultimate episode is titled Worthy. It's in this one where everything truly goes to shit. Cinder concocts a plan that is just so close to perfect. Instead of trying to brute force Watts and Neo to do her bidding, she puts both of their goals in front of her own to gain back their support. Cinder gets them both exactly what they want. She gets Watts on Atlas's main computer to all but guarantee the kingdom's destruction, and Neo a chance for revenge on Rwby. Everything that goes wrong for our hero stems from this too, as it's Watts that frees Harriet and Ironwood. From this point on, the volume is nearly a complete win for Cinder. Even though as an audience we are genre savvy enough to know that falling into this void isn't death, the same can't be said for the characters in-universe. In the eyes of the other characters, Cinder just murdered the entirety of Team Rwby, who are arguably the biggest thorn in her side for this entire journey. Once she has the staff, she also double-crosses her two co-conspirators, eliminating a completely unloyal ally in Neo and a judgmental peer in Watts. This is totally payback for everything he said dangling from 20 stories up. Now, the only reason this wasn't a slam dunk 10 out of 10 win for Cinder was because she didn't get the Winter Maiden powers. But this is due to something Cinder fundamentally doesn't understand or consider. Penny sacrificing herself to give Winter the Maiden powers was a truly selfless act. Not only does it wrap up her character arc on choice in a wonderful way, but it ties into Cinder's arc in the sense that Cinder may never understand what true selflessness looks like. It shows us that even though the scene made her grow as a villain, she did not grow as a human being. And with how much this Grim Arm has taken control of her body with each passing volume, this seems completely purposeful. In the end, this scene's importance to the volume can't be stated enough. It sets the stage for Team Ruby's loss in the final 2 episodes, as well as Cinder's complete sweep of so many crucial characters. It's this scene that allows for Cinder to be responsible for not only Atlas's fall, not only gaining 2 of the 4 god-summoning relics, but also nearly a dozen main character deaths, 4 of which being our main characters. This is the scene that fully realized Cinder's capacity for villainy, and the final spoken word of Volume 8's finale makes it clear. In one of the final scenes of Volume 8, Cinder feigns a need for forgiveness to Salem as Atlas falls down to Mistral. She lists out things that, on paper, all may seem like losses to Salem, but it's clear Salem really doesn't care about any of those things. All that matters is that Cinder prioritized getting the 2 relics. Salem walks right past Ironwood, who lost his mind trying to combat her, not even acknowledging his presence, only for Cinder to be the one to talk down to him. Cinder had been playing Ironwood for the entirety of this show. She freaked him out back in Volume 3, caused him to close Atlas's ports in Volume 4, and is now responsible for arguably our hero's biggest loss. If this were a game of chess, and we were to assume Salem represents the king piece on the villain's side, it makes sense how Cinder has always used a glass queen to represent her presence when intimidating Ironwood. And it all leads up to Cinder's final words to Ironwood concerning this game of wits they've locked themselves in, and a really awesome end of the arc she underwent this volume.
And that's checkmate.
In conclusion, Watts roasting Cinder is not only a cathartic scene for the audience, not only does it inspire Cinder to become a better version of the villain she's trying to be, and not only does it mark the point in the volume that sets up Cinder's win in the finale, but it just holds the idea of being an antagonist in such an important light. I haven't seen many shows that allow the villain that has arguably hurt the audience the most to sit down and shed some tears over the fact that she hasn't been succeeding enough. Like I said, this isn't your typical grandiose villain scene, but with how this challenges our main villain, and the effect it has on the story, I couldn't consider it anything less than one amazing villainous scene. Thanks for watching my analysis. I hope you enjoyed my deep dive into Cinder's journey from Rwby Volume 8. I've linked the One Villainous Scene playlist in the description below. Please feel free to check out all the other awesome videos people have made discussing their favorite villainous moments.